Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are finally testing out the new Luminous Legends collection from Mcgrath for holiday 2024. There are a lot of pieces in this collection, so we're not going to waste any time. Mcgrath did launch a ton of eyeshadows for this year's holiday collection. There is her usual mega palette. She also launched 2 quints and 3 duos, which she's never released the duos before. So I picked up 1 mega palette, 1 quint, and 1 duo. I just found that that was really all that was necessary. Now, we have had a bit of a strange year with Mcgrath, but I did kind of go through and look up every single shade and every single palette that she's coming out with for holiday. And I did find quite a few shades that previously exist in her Idol formula, so her single shadows. I don't know that she still has those anymore. I don't think so. So they did exist in those, but none of these were existing in other eyeshadow palettes, so that was a good sign. So the first palette we'll talk about is actually the duo that I picked up, and this is the duo in Celestial Jade. The duo has a 12-month shelf life and is made in Italy. And this is what it looks like. And I did pick this one up because it is by far the most exciting of her duos. I thought they were all quite pretty, but this one definitely caught my eye. So we do have this green gold color story here. I will pop up those swatches as well. This is a very, very beautiful duo. And I will also pop up a short that I posted earlier this week using this duo. I figured that having that short up would allow me to focus on the other 2 palettes for this video. But for that look, I did have a bronzer in the crease in the outer corner, and then I took the shade Moonlit Gold on the inner portion of the lid, and then I went in with Celestial Jade on the rest of my lid, and I really, really loved how it turned out. I thought it was very pretty, definitely very holiday. These shimmers are definitely typical to what she has in her usual holiday palettes. These aren't going to be like the shimmers in her Motherships, but nothing from the holiday collection is like what is in her Mothership palettes. But these are definitely typical for her holiday shimmers, and I do think they are a lovely formula. And I should also mention the duos do retail for $25 US. So next I picked up the quint in Dawn Divinity. So she did release 2 quints. These are $38 each. There is Dawn Divinity and Starfall Seduction. Starfall Seduction I didn't pick up because I did not think I would get the most use out of that particular color story. Now, Dawn Divinity is definitely going to be similar to other palettes and color stories that I have in my collection, but it's one that I'm more likely to reach for. So this is what that inner packaging looks like, much like the box, and then opening up the palette. We're definitely getting a bit of a sunset vibe here. We've got 1 matte. We do have this champagne. We have our pop of bronzy gold here. We have a pink, and then we have a very sparkly deep brown with some pink glitters in there. I will say the matte that's in here is very much like the mattes that are in her other 5 pans that she releases around holiday. These are an incredibly creamy matte. They're almost like a cream to powder eyeshadow formula. So let's take a quick look at the swatches of the quint. Going left to right, we have Glowing Desire, Sienna Sunrise, Rose Metallica, Sunlit Nectar, and Twilight Topaz. So this one is very, very pretty. I just knew the other quint was going to be too deep and I just wasn't going to love it as much as I would like. So I will also mention the quints are also made in Italy and also have a 12-month shelf life. And finally, we have the Mega Palette. This retails for $76 US. This one is also made in Italy with a 12-month shelf life. Now, her holiday eyeshadow palettes are usually a different formula than her Motherships, of course, but I have found that since she started releasing these quints as well, these tend to be a much better formula than what is in the Mega palettes. I noticed in the past the quints have been always made in Italy and have a better formula, and the Mega palette she's gone back and forth on between having them made in Italy and made in the US, but even when they are made in Italy, the quality isn't usually the same as what is in these quints. These quints are definitely a better formula. However, the mattes and metallics in this mega palette seem to be the exact same formula that has been in her quints. So they are very creamy, cream to powder mattes, and then you have these beautiful reflective shimmers that are also very, very creamy. So we're still not getting the mothership formula by any means, but we are getting a really, really nice formula in here. And I have really, really loved the eyeshadow quints in years past. So I am excited that she put that formula in here as well. So let's take a look at the swatches of this large mega palette, which does have 15 shades. Going left to right, we have Golden Muse, Rose Afterglow, Flame Fatale, Sunkissed Rose, Stardust Peony, Coral Caress, Bordeaux Brilliance, Orchid Opulence, Moonlit Mist, Platinum Lilac, Honey Nectar, Celestial Cerulean, Gilded Bronze, Lunar Luxury, and Sable Seductress. So we have our classic pinks and golds. We also have some purples. We have some blues. So this is a very pretty color story. Toward the end, I will show you comparison to the other holiday palettes, but I think what we're gonna do today is create 4 different looks with this palette, and then I will create 1 look with the quint. And that way I will have played with everything and I can let you know my final thoughts. So let me zoom you in and we will get to creating some looks with this palette. All right, so I currently just have some concealer and powder on my lids. I don't go too crazy with the prep when I'm doing multiple looks because I don't need them to wear a long time. So one thing I will note is that the mattes in here are brown and pink, and that is pretty typical. Her holiday palettes usually are quite shimmer heavy, and the mattes are always some form of pink or gold. So I think to start, I'm going to play with the more colorful shades because that's the most out of my comfort zone. And then I will get into those more neutral shades. So I think I'm going to start with Sunkissed Rose. And I'm just going to lightly use this one to buff it into the crease. And like I said, these are not powdery at all because these are a very cream to powder type formula, which I absolutely love. And I find it interesting that that is the direction that Pat Mcgrath went for this year's holiday palette. She's done that in her quints, but she's never done it in her large mega holiday palette. So blended out, that just kind of looks like a really nice transition. It's not actually too pink. You could definitely build it up to be quite a pink shade, but like I said, just sort of buffed out on the lid and in the crease. It's really not too pink at all. As much as I don't like blue eyeshadow on me, I think the first look I want to create has to be with those blue shades. So I am going to go in to Moonlit Mist and start adding this to the inner portion of my lid. This is quite pretty. It's not as intense as I thought. I'm kind of wondering if I should try it with a finger just to get a little bit more impact. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go if you're looking for impact from these shimmers. So I think what I might do then is bring this over most of the lid, blend those edges, and then I think I want to pick up Celestial Cerulean. So this looks very, very blue, but then when I look at it on certain angles, it almost looks purple. And this one is definitely going to give me quite a bit of fallout. It's definitely on the chunkier side. Okay, just going in to blend those edges. I really don't like blue eyeshadow on me. I'm going to go in to Lunar Luxury right here. And I'm going to put this one on the inner corner. Oh, I like that. I think that's pretty. I do like it with Lunar Luxury. I don't love this look I might like it more once I have some mascara on, so I'm going to be patient, but I don't love it. I like the lighter blue. I think that's quite pretty. The darker one, I don't love. I do find the darker one to be a little bit on the chunky side when I was picking it up, so I didn't love that. So I don't love this look. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. But again, I just don't like blue eyeshadow on me. So that's probably why, but let's go to the other side and then see what we can create over there. I am actually going to start with that same matte, which is Sun-Kissed Rose, because I want to play with the purples over here. And this pink, when blended out in the crease, I found it to be a bit more cool tone. So I think it's going to work beautifully with those purples. And as I'm looking at this, I feel like we get 4 mattes in here and 3 of them are actually pink and only one of them is really brown. All right, next I'm going into Platinum Lilac. I think this is so beautiful. So I am going to pick this up on a finger and I'm going to start by placing it. Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful purple. And it is very creamy as well. Oh my goodness, that is a beautiful purple. Okay. I already like where this is going as opposed to the other side. That's a beautiful, beautiful purple. Okay, now I'm going into that deeper purple right in the middle, Orchid Opulence. This shade to me looks much different in person than it did in some of her promo shots. And I am going to start by placing this one on the outer portion of the lid and working my way in and start to overlap the 2 shades a little bit. Going back in with a brush because I really do need that precision. And starting to overlap Platinum Lilac. They make a really, really pretty color when you mix them. Okay. So I love how that looks. I kind of want to take a teeny tiny bit of Lunar Luxury, which was the inner corner shade I used over here. I want to take a little tiny bit of that and go in the inner corner. Okay, so I do like how that came together better than the blue side. I'm really, really loving that lilac shade. I think that's beautiful. Let me pop off camera, pop on some mascara, and come back to show you the final 2 looks before we hop into the next 2. All right, so here are the finished 2 looks, and it's amazing how well things come together with mascara. It just makes or breaks a look. I definitely do prefer the purple side. Still, I just love those shades better. I love how everything came together. The blue side, still just not a favorite. But again, I've never been a blue eyeshadow wearer, so I'm not surprised that I don't love the blue side. I do love the purple though. So not bad first attempt. Let's get into the next 2 looks. All right, getting into look number 3, I'm gonna start with Coral Caress. And I did manage to preserve the mascara, which is always a goal of mine, just because doing multiple looks in one video is always difficult, but when you try taking off mascara, it just gets so messy. The shade is really, really nice in the crease. It's quite soft, and it blends out really, really beautifully. I do like the quality of these mattes. They're definitely pigmented, but can be sheared out and blended very, very easily. So I am enjoying the quality of those for sure. Because I haven't tried this shade yet, I want to go into Rose Afterglow, this one right here. I want to start putting this one on that outer corner. This one is quite bright. And it is a pink. It does have a bit of a gold shimmer to it. It kind of reminds me of NARS Orgasm. I don't know if that's exactly what I was looking for that outer corner. So I might go into the shimmer just below that one, Bordeaux Brilliance. Pick a little bit of that one up. It is a shimmer, but I kind of just want to see if I can use it for that outer corner to get the depth that I'm looking for. Okay, I'm just going to grab my crease brush again just so I can blend those edges. Sometimes I look so angry when I'm blending eyeshadow. I don't mean to, but when I'm editing the videos back, I'm always like, why do I look so angry when I'm being serious? I swear I'm not. Then I think I want to pick up the shade Stardust Peony. I'm going to pick this one up on a finger. And this is another one that is kind of pinky peach but has a gold shimmer to it. I do think it's quite pretty. Just grabbing that flat brush again, going into Bordeaux Brilliance and tapping it between the two shades to kind of mesh them together. I am going to grab another brush and I'm going to go into Golden Muse right here. And I don't really love this one. When I swatched it out, it definitely has a very sheer base, but it looked just very yellow. So I don't know that this shade is necessarily going to be a favorite. Perhaps as an inner corner shade, because that does look quite pretty. Looks a little more Eastery to me now, though. Now we've got the pink and the kind of yellow. Yeah, I mean, this look is okay. It's not the prettiest pink that I've ever seen or used, but it's not terrible. But let's jump into the other side. I want to play with some of these really neutral, sparkly shades. I think I will start with Sunkissed Rose. I've used this quite a few times today as my crease shade, so I think that will typically be the crease shade that I go for in this palette, although I did enjoy that other coral shade as well. And this I am expecting to like because we are playing with those neutral browns. Okay, next I'm going into Sable Seductress. I'm going to use this for my outer corner shade, and this is definitely the richest shade in the palette. It's blending very, very well with that crease shade for sure. It's not looking quite as intense on the eye. So I am just going to see if I can build it a little bit. Now I'm going to pick up Honey Nectar because from swatches, I feel like this one and Lunar Luxury are the two prettiest shades in the palette. And this is like a rose gold. It's so pretty. I think this would be a really pretty shade to mix with those pinky tones. I think that may have been really, really pretty. I will have to do that next time. Again, very shiny, very sparkly, very, very pretty. Okay, I'm just going into Gilded Bronze and sort of tapping this one on that outer corner to mesh that lid shade with the outer corner. Sort of pull everything together. Okay, I love how that is looking, and back into Lunar Luxury for the inner corner. Yeah, that's pretty. Okay, so I like how that one turned out. I think that looks quite pretty. The pink look, there's something missing. I keep looking at the palette trying to figure out what it is. I'm thinking maybe I could have mixed in this shade. I think that may have somehow added to it. I just don't know 100% what I'm missing with that pink shade. So this more rose gold look over here is definitely the favorite. I would say followed by the purple and then the pink and then the blue. I don't like the blue or the pink side very much. The pink options, somehow there's just something missing and I can't quite figure out what it is. I will, of course, continue to play with this palette so that I can figure out maybe how to wear these pinks so that I like them. The blues, I just don't like blue eyeshadow myself, so I knew I wouldn't like those. But the browns and the purples in here are solid. The pinks are okay. I don't love that yellow shade that I used for the inner corner over here. I really don't like it. I don't think it's very flattering. But overall, this palette is fun to play with so far. So let me take off these two looks and then we will create a look with the Quint, and then I will come back. I'll show you some comparisons to her other holiday palettes, and then we can get into my final overall thoughts. All right, so let's get into the final look with the Quint in this collection. This is the Dawn Divinity collection. I am starting with that matte brown. This is Sienna Sunrise, and this is the only matte, so it is kind of sort of a mid-tone sort of brown, a little deeper than I would typically go for my crease shade, but this actually is blending out very, very easily. This shade is really, really rich. It's definitely a very warm brown, like I said, but a little bit definitely goes a long way. And I like how I can build it up to be very pigmented on that outer corner, but still bring it up into the crease to give myself a really nice defined eye. So I do quite like this matte shade. All right, I think I'm going to go into Sunlit Nectar. I know we have this pink right in the middle, but I don't think I'm going to go for that pink. This is definitely supposed to give us sort of like a sunset kind of vibe. Definitely very, very warm, very copper. Halo eye would be really pretty with this one as well. Just a very simple, easy sparkle. And then I want Glowing Desire. I'm going to pick this up on a finger as well. And putting this one on the inner corner and sort of bringing it up just a little bit. I do think this quint is really pretty though. I'm liking how that's looking, but I feel like I should go into this deeper one here on the end, Twilight Topaz. I don't want to use too much of it because I don't want to ruin the look, but I do sort of want to tap a little bit on the outer corner. Oh, I like it though, actually. Okay, I'm actually quite happy I did that. Such a small thing, but it definitely made some impact. Yeah, I definitely like that. So same thing on this side. All right, so I like how that look turned out. And again, this is kind of a look I would wear all the time because I do love my browns. I've been leaning into warm tones a little bit more this year, and overall, I just really like how it came together. So let me zoom you out and we can get into some final thoughts. Let's talk about these palettes. So one thing I will say is that this year's Mega palette is definitely a little bit thinner and shorter than some of the previously very, very bulky holiday palettes. So that is one thing I do want to mention. So if you compare this one to Celestial Odyssey, you can see this one is definitely quite a bit shorter. This one did, of course, have 18 shades as opposed to the 15 we got this year. So Celestial Odyssey was actually the one from 2021. You can see there are definite similarities with some of the packaging. It almost feels like she took this red of Celestial Odyssey and sort of combined it with the Bridgerton packaging with the bows and the gems. I think this year's packaging is really pretty. I really do like it. I kind of like it more than this, to be honest with you. The formulas in this one were fine. I loved the green in this palette. But once again, this is another one that is definitely very pinky brown with some pops of color in here. We have a purple that is quite similar to the one that I was really loving on today. And like I mentioned, you do get 18 shades. It was also quite a bit of wasted space in here, you know, right here and even in these corners. And this one didn't need to be as big and bulky as it was. I remember really liking this palette. This palette is one of the ones that was made in the US. The mattes are definitely true mattes. And the shimmers in here were pretty, but a lot of them were sort of basic metallics, really nothing special. And then we did have a couple of them that were definitely a little bit more on the foiled side, like this green here. This one definitely more intensely foiled and sparkly. This palette was fine. If you compare it to this year's palette, this year we definitely have some brighter pops of color, but overall, kind of a similar theme, a lot of these pinky browns with some pops of color. I will say this year's shimmers definitely do pack quite a bit more impact than the ones from this previous palette. And then in 2022, we had the Celestial Nirvana palette, and this is another one where we had 18 shades. I really liked the way she organized this one. So this one, we got some pinky browns, but we actually did get quite a lot more mattes in this one than we typically do. We had some reds, we had some purple mattes, we had a green matte as well, we had a blue. So she kind of gave us a little bit of everything in this one, and I really love this one. Again, we had a lot of those typical metallics, but we did get some extra foiled shades in here as well. And this one was actually made in Italy. And I do remember really, really enjoying this palette. And she also arranged this one in groups of 6. So this 6 was kind of meant to be a palette, this 6 and this 6. So I really enjoyed that as well. Compared to this year's palette, there's definitely some similarities. I mean, they're not going to be identical shade for shade dupes in here, but definitely some similarities. And then last year's mega palettes were a little different because she didn't necessarily do mega palettes, but she came out with 2 face and eye palettes. So these were last year's palettes. So you can see we don't have a ton of color similarities to this year's. These ones also had blushes. For these, the blushes were made in Italy, but the shadows were made in the US. And it was pretty obvious. I was definitely able to get some really pretty looks out of these palettes, but I'll be honest, the reason that I reach for these palettes still is for the blushes. I liked these palettes, but they weren't anything too crazy special. But I mean, this is definitely on theme for her holiday palettes. I do think it's a little bit brighter than a typical holiday palette, but I do think if you have any of the first 2 I mentioned, you probably don't need this one. It's a pretty palette, but it is pretty typical of Pat McGrath holiday. I do not have the one from 2020, or I would show you, but I think it's very pretty. I don't think it's a must-have. Again, I did struggle with some of the shades, particularly this blue right here. I was able to create a pretty look. I just don't like the blue on me, but I did struggle with this one a little bit. And I kind of struggled with the pinks, which is surprising. And this yellow shade over here, I just really, in general, do not like. However, I really do like the matte formula in this palette, and I do like the shimmers. I like that they are very creamy. I think they are very beautiful, and some of them are absolutely stunning. I will definitely continue to play with this and have fun with it and see what other kinds of looks I can create. I think it's a very pretty palette. I love that it's made in Italy. I like the formula in here quite a bit more than some of her previous holiday palettes, and I'm excited about that. I don't know why she dropped it down to 15 shades, but normally we do get 18 shades for $76. This time we got 15, so I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. But I do like the formulas in here, like I said, better than some of her other holiday palettes. The quint I liked as well. That's what I have on right now. I do quite like how this look came together and how easy this little quint was to use. When she came out with these quints 2 years ago with the Celestial Nirvana collection, I was so excited. So I have Bronze Bliss and Nude Allure. I think she came out with quints last year. Again, I missed them. Again, for some reason I didn't pick them up, and I still wish I did because they looked really pretty. These quints in particular are so, so good. I think the formula is pretty much the same. This is the first time that I saw that more cream to powder matte from Pat McGrath, and I love it so, so, so much. So I really, really loved these quints. Compared to this year's quint, there's not a lot of similarities in this one. This one is more cool toned, smoky, Nude Allure. They're not identical, but there are some similarities. That's why I do think that if you are picking up the quints, this one is definitely going to be the more safe option. You might already have a lot of things like this. The other one, I just didn't love the color story, but I do think that is one that you're going to get some more interesting looks. But I do like this little quint, and obviously the price point is much better on this one. But I think my favorite piece of this collection is the little duo. I think this duo is so pretty. I think the other color combos she had are pretty. Obviously with this color story, it's going to be so fun to reach for during the holidays, but in general, I just think they're both very, very sparkly and beautiful and easy to work with, and I really enjoyed creating with the little duo. So overall, I don't really think anything from this collection is an absolute need. I think the duo could be something that is really fun to pick up, especially if you love this little color story. The quint, I think, is also quite nice quality, but you probably already have a color story similar to this one. And the larger palette if you have picked up her holiday palettes in previous years, then you could probably create some very, very similar looks than you would create with this one. However, I do love that this one is made in Italy, and this seems to be that formula that is in her quints that we really, really like. Her US formula just isn't my favorite. It's not a bad formula, but it's not a luxury formula. This is not her luxury mothership formula, but it is far better than her US formula. So I am excited to see that in here. I had a lot of fun playing with these. Like I said, some shades I struggled with, but I do want to keep playing and creating with this palette to see what I can really do with it. But overall, I think it's a lovely palette. I think it's really fun. I don't think it's a need, but I think if you are interested in picking this one up, it is a fun little palette, and I do quite like the formula that is in here. I do think it is an upgrade from her US formula, but I don't know how I feel about only having 15 shades and it being the same price as her larger ones. But again, I am pleasantly surprised by this year's collection. I'm not crazy excited about it. It's not my favorite of all of this year's holiday launches, but I don't dislike it. I think everything is quite lovely, and I can't wait to keep playing with it. And I will give you my final thoughts at the end of the month, but overall, I think it's a lovely collection. That is it for me today. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!